Under Finance 2018-19 Budget Adoption, at the August 6th meeting, the Board approved the notice of hearing provided in Appendix 1, which, when published, establishes the maximum amounts for the 2018-19 budget. The notice was published on August 10th, 2018, and the public hearing was scheduled at the beginning of this meeting. This agenda item will include a presentation on the budget. The Board will have the opportunity to ask questions and discuss the proposed budget. Following the Board's adoption, the 2018-19 budget will be sent to Sedgwick County and the Kansas State Department of Education. It is recommended that the Board adopt the 2018-19 budget.
Welcome, Susan.
Good evening, President Logan, Vice President Rohde, Superintendent Thompson, members of the board, Dr. Irving. So I'm going to keep my comments tonight brief since we've spent 7 months discussing the budget. I think we've covered most of the ground we need to cover, but we'll cover a few recap items tonight, and we have a new circle graph for you to look at. So we'll hit those highlights. A quick comment. I know, not a clip art, but a little bit of art. A little quick comment on the salaries, just going off topic just a minute. And I appreciated your comments related to administrators specifically, Mr. Blankley, because if you don't believe we don't give that item a tremendous amount of scrutiny as we're putting together wage packages, we absolutely do, because we know that is a specific topic that does have a lot of debate around it. So just a quick comment that we do look at these wage packages in totality, and we try to keep the packages somewhat comparable, not knowing that every single group has its own unique pieces. We try to keep the overall value in a ballpark. And administrators are a unique group because they do not receive a longevity bonus. So their unit, if you will, for lack of a better term, their group is a little bit difficult as far as it's not apples to apples as when we're looking at the pieces that go into compensation. Teachers have that longevity bonus, the AJ, the security groups, and the KZs all have that. Administrators don't. So theirs will always look a little bit different, even though their overall percentages are very in line, if not a little bit under the rest of the groups. But because they don't have that piece, their base wages may be a little bit higher. So just a little bit of information related to that item that you talked about. Okay, back to the budget. So just a few budget highlights as a reminder. Our new revenues set the maximum budget authority for fiscal year 19. Our overall mill levy will be just slightly lower compared to last year. The overall net budget is higher, and that is predominantly our increased base state aid, increased special ed funding, and increased targeted state grants. And we'll just remind everyone what those are here in a minute. Several budgets, capers, bond and interest, gifts and grants are significantly higher, but those specifically did not add to our overall operational authority. They were for targeted spending. Kind of specifically looking at those items, last year's overall net budget after transfer was $682 million. Fiscal year 19 will check in at almost $740 million, a $57 million increase in budget authority. Specific items of note were the capers increase of $11.5 million, capital outlay at close to $9 million, bond and interest approaching $6 million, gifts and grants. This is where our mental health initiative lives. This is where our safety grant lives at over $5 million, some federal funds totaling $3 million, and what we had for general operational costs, an increase of $18 million. Our mill levy, proposed mill levy, again, just slightly lower at 53.615 mills. And looking at the historical trends, once again, you can see we've been relatively consistent over the years, except for those few outlying years where we had some equity challenges with the formula. And once those were corrected, we came back down into the 53, between 53 and 54 mills. Again, and you've heard it a lot tonight, all of our initiatives, our budget included, are aligned around our strategic plan. And the major pieces of the budget that where we had some control, we put into areas that met the themes of our strategic plan. And we've covered these quite a bit, so we won't go through those tonight. So here's our new circle graph as far as where do we spend our money. Resources invested in classrooms, this is a chart that is focused on our operating budget. It excludes any fixed asset and bond debt. So I think our chart last year was, it was straight up an 88%. We're looking at 87.2%. That isn't to say we're not investing dollars in those areas. It's just those other areas of our budget, which include those state grants, they don't hit the same state codes. So our facilities maintenance, where safety is hitting, is up. Our business support services is a little bit higher percentage-wise because of technology. So there's a few areas of just percentage shift, but the instruction, which is 54.9%, that actually received almost $18 million more money, but from a percentage-wise, we just came in just a little bit less. So all areas of the budget received funding, but 82.7%, which is a tremendous investment in our classroom expenditures, goes directly to support students. So I think we still have very much to be proud of, and we'll see this bounce around just a little bit as those grants kind of come in and come out over the course of the next few years. So we are tonight recommending that the board adopt the 2018-19 budget as we've proposed at a net max budget authority of $739.6 million and an estimated mill levy of 53.615 mills.
Very good, thank you. Stan?
Thank you, Cheryl. One of the speakers on tonight, one of the public speakers mentioned administration, and I was glad to see this chart shows it as it's 1%, if you ever get that question, Tricia, because I get that question too, so it's fairly common. How does that compare to, and I realize it's always tough to compare Wichita Public Schools to other districts, because number one, there's not very many, there's no one as large as us, plus the ones that are large are made up of completely different demographics. But if you did have to make some type of a comparison, how's our 1%, well, let's even throw in school administration of 6.1, but general administration of 1%, school administration of 6.1, how does that compare to other school districts?
You know, I wouldn't want to fathom a guess on that issue. I think that's important for us to come back to you with some firm research on that. My anecdotal feeling is it's low, but I would want to get you some facts. But again, the 1% in general administration, we know is low. School administration, we're pretty tight because we have to be, and there's a pool of school administrators out there to go hire. We have to kind of bring them and grow them, and that's another challenge that we have with some of our salary structures, is to get people incentivized to want to take these jobs where you put in a tremendous amount of hours for, in some cases, is a pay cut. So that area continues to be a challenge and will be a challenge for us as we go forward.
And I won't make a formal request tonight. But I would like to plant a seed and just see if there's any other board members that would like to try to compare as best as apple to apple. I know that's not easy with our school district, but perhaps maybe see if there's a majority of the board that's interested in trying to making some type of
There would
comparison.
be some data points we could look at. Either, again, we don't have a like school district as far as our size, but certainly there are other schools throughout the country that we could look at that are similar in demographics to us.
And then I would just conclude by saying that the study that the legislature hung their hat on said they had never found school districts as efficient as the Kansas public schools. They were expecting 10%, 15% inefficiency, and they found, what, 4%, 6%?
Right, less than 5% inefficient.
Less than 5. So this is an issue that we in the public board have to answer to, but it really is a red herring. It's really of a non-issue. Yes, you always want to keep your administrative costs down, but that has not been a problem in Kansas. Definitely has not been a problem in the Wichita Public School. And we may want to, I don't know if you guys want to at some point try to compare apple to apple, but just basically tonight want to just plant a seed in that area.
Thank you. Julie?
Susan, I think I've asked this question every time, so I'm going to do it again. As we look at our budget, we're very appreciative and thankful that we have the increased money this year, but take a look back and remind us where we're at historically on our per pupil allocation.
The current base is 4165, so that is down from the high of 4492, which was reduced to 4400 back in the 08-09 school year. So we have made up ground from 3852, which is where we were under the block grant, but we are not back to 4400.
Thank you.
Ernestine?
And what year was that we were,
2008-09
so 10 years ago?
with inflation.
We are not even back to that.
No.
I like this circle graph, but school administration, isn't that the ones that are in the schools?
It is, and it
Yes.
is included in the 87.2%. Anything that really goes to support kids and their direct education, which would include their meals and the utilities to keep the lights on in the classroom, and school administration is included.
And
in that.
nurses, and
Yes.
social workers,
Yes.
and librarians.
Yes,
Good.
all of those.
Thank you, because that's the thing is that a lot of times talks about, well, there's not enough going to the classroom. It was like, wait a minute, there's going to the students, which is the issue. Okay, thank you.
And if you look at the last year's graph compared to this year's graph, you will see a slight switch also between instruction and the nurses, social workers, counselors, which does show the impact of the mental health initiative too. Those
Good.
percentages switched a little bit. Again, still focused on the support of the student, but you can really see we're starting to target that category of support for kids that we've seen over and over again our kids need.
I think that's a better way to put it. Support for students as opposed to this wording, what goes in the classroom. Because what's in that little box of the classroom isn't all of the education
Right.
that is done for our students. So thank you.
Mike?
Susan, thank you for this. It's a pleasure that it's been 2 years that we haven't cut budgets, we haven't cut schools, we haven't cut programs, we haven't on and on and on, and we gave somebody a raise. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. I just hope it's not another train coming at us in November. So with that said, I'd like to recommend that we accept this budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mike and a second by Stan. Oh, I'm sorry, Stan, you had,
And I would just like to say that it's nice also that Cheryl and Mike get to vote on a budget like this.
I know, hallelujah.
And we want to thank you for hanging in there for all those years where you had to do some awful decisions, and yet you made them, and we appreciate it. So I wanted to thank you and it's nice to vote on a budget like this, and so you guys can get some credit as well.
Well, cutting $90 million is not what I've ever thought I'd have to do.
yeah.
So it is nice that we're getting a little bit of that 90 million back, even though it's slow.
Well, the person that deserves a lot of the praise is sitting in front of us, and
Yes.
we know she's going to take 2 weeks off and start on the 1920 budget, so we're ready to start that in a couple of weeks.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor, and I believe we are ready to vote. Motion passes 7-0. Yay!